Now, what's going on with you today? Hope you're staying blessed out there, my friend. In this video, I want to talk a little bit about country music, hip-hop, why country music is seeing such a surge in numbers, especially this last year. I want to make some comparisons between country and hip-hop and talk a little bit about why country is actually above hip-hop right now, at least on the charts. Country music is one of the biggest genres out right now. The genre has seen a very rapid surge in terms of numbers, especially this last year. The genre is reaching a lot of different places all around the world, and it's even converting a lot of non-country believers into country music fans. Now the question is, why is this happening and how come it's happening at such a rapid pace? So like a lot of us know, hip-hop has been one of the most dominating forces in music, especially these last couple of years. A lot of the corporations who run the music industry have decided to allocate a lot of money towards the development of hip-hop acts because the genre has culturally had such a chokehold on music. Now this is nothing new because hip-hop as not only a genre but as a culture especially as well has been so relevant to the mainstream in general. Everything from style to lingo to lifestyle, hip-hop has been an extremely powerful force. Now one of the downsides we've seen, at least for hip-hop, when it comes to a lot of this funding that's been allocated towards the genre, is that the industry has raised its standard for the level of quantity that it expects from its artists. This has in return, unfortunately, diminished the quality of the music getting released, because generally speaking, the more you focus on quantity, automatically in the process of that, the quality ends up taking somewhat of a hit. As it relates to hip-hop, the quality not being in the focal point has noticeably affected the actual material being put out, and that's a change that we as hip-hop fans have observed in the genre. In the midst of hip-hop going through somewhat of a shaky period, there's been a lot of other genres that have grown immensely during this period. Latin music has seen a crazy amount of growth. Afrobeats is really popular right now. And then we have country music, which is seeing an undeniable amount of success right now. A lot of the consumers whose loyalty was strictly towards hip-hop are now moving on to some of these other genres. But that's not why country music is seeing a surge in popularity. Let's just say that country music right now has a new class of superstars who are dominating the mainstream. One of those names is Morgan Wallen, a 30-year-old country musician from Sneedville, Tennessee, who's been dominating the Billboard charts the last year, specifically with the song Last Night, which occupied the #1 spot on Billboard for 16 weeks straight. The song has also spent 49 consecutive weeks on the Billboard Hot 100. Just to draw a comparison between a country musician and a hip-hop artist, let's take Roddy Ricch for example. His song, or should I say his song ended up spending 11 weeks at the #1 spot and 38 weeks on the charts. And this accomplishment for a hip-hop artist of Roddy Ricch's status, very, very big. Now back to Morgan Wallen. Now his album One Thing at a Time, which came out in March of last year, ended up being one of the most successful commercial releases of 2023. Now apart from his single Last Night, his album One Thing at a Time also ended up spending 16 weeks at #1 on the Billboard 200. So Morgan Wallen is a name who's considered one of the music industry giants right now. He has some of the biggest records in music and some of the biggest albums in music right now. This guy's not only carrying country music on his back, but he's also introducing an entire generation of young people to the genre as well. From my observation, a lot of people in the country scene don't consider him real country because his music has so much pop influence. Regardless of any of the labels that people put on him though, his music is after all country, and that's what he labels himself as. Now one of the things that I've noticed about a lot of these country artists who are very big is that despite how big they become, a lot of them seem to be able to hold on to that relatability factor that made them popular in the first place. And this is something that I feel like a lot of hip-hop artists are lacking, especially these days. The more successful and the bigger you get, the more of a disconnect there seems to be present in a lot of our artists. For country, as I've been kind of analyzing a little bit, what I've noticed is they go out of their way to kind of keep that modest and humble aspect of their persona because they know how big of a part that played in their success. And initially I couldn't really understand why this was happening. Like how come a lot of the artists in hip hop, as they get bigger, there seems to be more of an emphasis being put on the differences that exist between themselves, the artist, and the consumer. But for a lot of these country artists, that's the complete opposite. As they get bigger and bigger, there seems to be more of a connection between them and their community of listeners. And the understanding that I have now is the fact that this is a cultural thing. Hip-hop for the longest time, and it's still true now, but a little less than it used to be, hip-hop has always had the aura of the cool kid in class. Everybody wants to be friends with him, right? Everybody wants to be a part of what hip hop got going on because hip hop is and always has been such a cool genre, the kind of genre that not only inspires a lot of trends, but the kind of genre that is the trend that everybody's stealing from. Now, one of the things that comes with hip hop being this way is the flashy aspect of hip hop, the glitz and the glamour that makes everybody feel enamored with the genre that is hip hop. The genre has been thriving off of puffing its chest out, so to speak, and the artists of the genre have been representing hip-hop in this exact way for as long as we can remember. Even some of the genre's most humble artists have had their moments of being flashy. And even though this is what makes hip-hop the genre that it is, I think considering not only the state of music, but especially the state of the world, we're going to talk about that shortly, this is one of the aspects of hip-hop I think has led to some of its downfall, at least commercially. Because here we have a genre like country, which is, as of right now, bigger than hip-hop, at least on the Billboard charts, that puts not the lifestyle at the forefront, but the story, which hip-hop is all about storytelling, but commercially, the storytelling aspect of hip-hop on a mainstream level doesn't really play that big of a part on a record's success like it used to. When it comes to country music, what I've observed is that the storytelling aspect that a lot of these really big country stars still hold on to, along with the relatability aspect, is very much in congruence with the culture of the genre. And that creates an interplay between the artist's genre and the consumers, which strengthens the feeling of this tight-knit community. And that subconsciously not only solidifies but also crystallizes the exact purpose that the music is intending to have on the people who are listening to it. Because any culture, regardless of if we're talking specifically music, but any culture has a very specific value system that it promotes, intentionally or unintentionally. And one of the things with country music specifically is that they really emphasize on speaking to the working class citizen, which that's a lot of people. More specifically, according to a poll from 2022, 46% of American adults identified as either working class or lower class, and then the rest identified as upper middle or middle class. Now, this is important as it relates to this conversation because when it comes to country music, at least on a very large scale, they put the kind of topics at the forefront that big chunk of people can most likely relate to. So we're talking about the everyday struggle that the average person goes through who's not considered upper class or even middle class. When it comes to hip hop, this is where I think we're losing a lot of the listeners that we could have potentially scooped up. Either scooped up, i.e. converted, or we can even say maintained. We're losing a lot of these people from staying loyal to the genre because they would rather listen to country music, which not only embodies but also consistently speaks on the things that they're going through on a daily basis. And one of the most important aspects of this conversation is the fact that we're talking about mainstream country music. When we talk about mainstream hip-hop in 2023 at least, that relatability factor that hip-hop as a genre held on to in the past, that's obviously slipped away. The most popular records in hip-hop now are not a reflection of what the average person goes through on a daily basis. When it comes to country, they've been able to keep that aspect of their music completely intact while still rapidly going up in numbers. When we take a close look at the world in general right now, how many people aren't out here struggling financially, especially post the pandemic, and how many of those people, while struggling financially, aren't simultaneously going through things like heartbreak, or perhaps maybe they're questioning their faith or their place in this world. Country music is rapidly growing while talking about a lot of these things that the average person can relate to, and the genre is doing it at a very big level on top of that. I think the distinction here is that one genre, hip-hop, is putting a lifestyle at the forefront that the average person can relate to, and the genre has been doing it for such a long time, while another genre, country, is reminding its listeners why they're so alike, and they're doing this on a mainstream level. That's the most important part here. Just in general, celebrity culture is kind of dying now. It may not seem like it, but I think it is. And one of the biggest reasons is because people simply have a lot of real life things to worry about now, which they've always had, but post the pandemic, things have obviously intensified. And a lot of the regular celebrity gossip news that once was very, very prominent is now slowly over time kind of dying. That's why the kind of conversations we're having over here are so refreshing, don't you think? I'm sure you do. Because for the longest time, people have been reporting on things that are related to celebrities and not really had anything to say to to go along with reporting on those celebrities. Just to come full circle really quickly, essentially what I'm saying is people are more concerned with the things that matter now. That's why a lot of people these days don't really feel that much sympathy for when celebrities are struggling. A lot of these country musicians, however, they don't really portray themselves as celebrities due to their content. They're simply more connected to their community than, let's say, your average hip-hop artist now. And that's very much emphasized in the material that they're putting out, especially on a mainstream level. Because the things that touch the mainstream, they reach the most amount of people. And so if the content that's reaching the most amount of people is hitting on things that the average person can relate to, what's going to happen is you're going to build a deeper bond with the people who are actually listening to you. And this is one of the reasons why I think a lot of people are not as tuned into hip-hop as they once used to be. I've spoken about this in the past, but hip-hop is losing monopoly, and we know that because that's what the numbers are telling us. Meanwhile, we got other genres, like for example country music, that keeps on climbing and climbing. I look at music as a reflection of life, and I think the closer you can get to real life with the music that you're putting out, like country music is doing on a very large scale, I think automatically that one-on-one heart-to-heart vibe is by default gonna develop. And while a genre like hip-hop is unfortunately moving away from that heart-to-heart, spirit-to-spirit feeling that it once used to have, other genres like country are moving towards that. And that's why I think country is surpassing hip-hop. Anyway, there you have the conversation. Before you leave, can you do me a favor and like this video if you enjoyed this conversation? If you do decide to like, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Also, make sure you subscribed. If you're new here, my name is Blacky Speaks. Thank you for joining me today. Curious to hear what you guys have to say about this conversation though. Country music, hip hop, why is country music growing so rapidly? Why did country music end up dominating so much last year? And why did hip hop fall behind? Curious to hear what you have to say about this conversation. Catch you in the comment section, and I'll also catch you on the next one as well, obviously. Peace, blessings, have a good day, have a good night, wherever you're at. And yeah, I'm out.